Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're talking about something called Doctests. So if you remember the doc string that we talked about a couple of times in this course, you can add documentation to your functions and to your modules using those triple double quotes. We can actually write test code in there as well, and Python has a way of automatically parsing and running those tests for us. But the catch is that we have to use a pretty out there syntax, in my opinion. It is charming in a way. I like writing doc tests, but we'll talk about the limitations as well. I'm not presenting this to you as the best way of testing everything, but it is good to know about. So doc tests allow us to write tests for functions inside the doc string. But the catch that I mentioned is that we have to write our code in a very, very particular way so that it looks like we're writing in a REPL. What do I mean by that? Well, here's an example. So we have these triple double quotes inside of, here's an add function, triple double quotes, and then this is a part I'm talking about. This right here will turn into a test. So by me writing this, the greater than, the prompt, and then running add 1, 2, I'm basically saying, okay, we should expect add 1, 2 to result in 3. But we have to follow this very particular syntax. I expect add 8, high to result in a type error. And it has to look like this. It has to match what you would see in the REPL. What's cool about Doctests is that if you create a module or a library or a package that someone uses, you write a doc string automatically. I mean, you should have a doc string in there for anything that someone's going to use. You put in this code as a demonstration for how it should work to a user. This is a human readable thing that I can look at. Like when we saw the colorize example or any of the things we've worked with, there's a doc string in there that has a usage example that is both good for developers to look at, but also Python can run it to make sure that the code still works how it's supposed to. Something might have changed, and if you just write your tests this way, then it works as both documentation and as tests. Before we talk about limitations, let's look at a good old example. Okay, here I have a similar set of tests. It's shorter, where I have a function called add, A and B, and then we have our good old doc string there, triple double quotes. And I've written 2 tests. These are the syntax, right? So we use this little prompt, and then I say, when you run add 2, 3, it should return 5. When you run add 100, 200, you should get 300. But right now I'm returning A times B. So that's incorrect. It's not going to work. And if I run it, I don't even have to actually execute add or anything. There's a special command I can ask Python to run that will it will parse the doc strings and find all the tests to run and then run them. It looks like this: Python 3-m doctest-v, and then the name of the file. Mine is called doctest-demo.py. So those 2 tests that I wrote are not going to work, and I get this nice little verbose output. So it starts off, it says trying, add 2, 3, expecting 5. And then it freaks out because it got 6. Then it moves on to the next one, trying, add 100, 200, expecting 300. And it tells me failed example, expected 300 got 20,000. One item had failures, 2 of 2 in doctest-demo.add, 0 passed, 2 failed. Total tests failed, 2 failures. All right, so it's pretty cool, in my opinion, that it's able to do that. It's built in. It parses all the code from here, figures out what to test. It knows that, okay, the code that comes after this, we need to actually run, and then we should expect it to equal this. If not, it's counted as a failed test, and we'll print it out to the user. So if we just fix this with a plus sign, and now I go back and run it. Cool. Trying, it expected 5 and it was okay. Trying, it expected 300, okay. 2 passed, and 0 failed. All tests passed. Cool. Now let's add another test, a new function and another test, but let's go about it the TDD way. So we're going to go with red, green, refactor. Let's write a function called double. And we'll start off with just double takes in an argument called values. And for now, we'll just assume that it's a list. But before we do anything, we're going to practice TDD, and we're going to write our tests. So we need that doc string. And in here, just write the doc string, double the values in a list. That's our goal. And then we write our first test. And we have to do these 1, 2, 3 greater than signs. double when we call it on, or call it with 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one test we could write. And what should we get back? We should expect a list with 2, 4, 6, and 8. And then we can write another test case. If we call double with an empty list, what should we expect to get back? An empty list. And another one with a string this time. So if we call double and then we pass in, let's say, the list A, B, C, we should expect this list, the string AA, the string BB, the string CC. And finally, we're going to write one where we try something that shouldn't work. If I called double with a list inside of it that, I don't know, had, let's say, true and then none. We can't double those. And if we wanted to test to make sure that we get an error, this is the worst part. I'm going to fast forward so you see what I have to type. Look at that. This is what I have to write. I have to mimic exactly what we would see in the Python REPL. So that is kind of a pain to write. But let's practice TDD. So I write my test, and let's make sure we're in the red. Let's run the code. Here we go. And we get 2 passed and 4 failed. Oh, because it's running the first 2, I could comment this out, but it's running these. So let's try one more time. We're getting 0 pass, 4 failed. We're completely in the red. All right, so now it's our job to make them pass, red and then green. So to make some of these pass, we could get away with something really small, like returning an empty list. That's gonna make this work. So let's run it now. All right, 3 of 4, 1 pass, 3 failed. Okay, now we go back and we continue to make other test pass. So let's just fix this, and we'll just do 2 times, let's call it element for element in list. What am I saying? List in values. There we go. Okay, that's coming in. So we could do this also without a list comprehension. You could use map. You could do it manually by looping through and multiplying and appending to a list. Up to you. Now let's see if it works. Moment of truth here. 3 passed and 1 failed. Okay, so the one that's failing, let's see. Here's the one that failed. I think, what is this? The spaces in there? Is that the problem? 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's see. Is that really what the problem was? Let's try again. Yep. So finicky. So that's my next point about doc tests. I think it's cool, but I've spent a lot of time already in this video finagling the syntax. This is a very specific syntax, and it's unlike anything you type in Python otherwise, and you have to be very, very careful. Okay, now I have a couple of examples to show what bothers me, some of the problems you might run into. Here is a perfectly good looking doc test, in my opinion. Very simple function called say hi. It just returns the string hi, and I just test that. When I call say hi, it should give me the string hi. But alas, when I run it, what do we get? Failed. Expected hi, and it got single string hi, not double string. So Doctests expects all strings to have single quotes, not double quotes. So if you're comparing, we have to put single quotes there because it's automatically going to try and compare to single quotes. So frustrating. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one as a failure just so you can see as an example that it doesn't work. I've added another one. This one gets me all the time. Looks perfectly good. It's just a function called trueThat, and all it does is return true in our case. That's not really the significance or the significant point. When we call trueThat, we expect true. And that's what you should get. But if we look, when I run it, it fails. Expected true got true. How do we know the difference? What's actually happening? Well, there's a little white space right there, the trailing white space, and that's throwing everything off. So we have to delete that. And now if I try and run it, it now passes, as you can see here. Trying trueThat, expected true, okay. And I have one last example. This is called makeDict, and when we call it with a list of 2 items, say A and B, I expect it, misspelled true, I expect it to return a dict where both items are just set to true in a dictionary. So they're the keys, A and B are both the keys, and they're true. So I have that down here, true for key in keys. And if I run it, it should work, but nope, it doesn't. You can see here the problem. It expected B to be first and then A, and it got A first and then B, which normally is not a problem. These are dictionaries. There isn't supposed to be an order that matters. But in Doctests, the order of keys in a dictionary does matter. So yeah, it's kind of a minefield when you're writing these doc tests. You got to be really careful. You really have to mind your white space and your quotation marks. It kind of drives me insane. So the issues, the syntax is bizarre. Just to begin with, the syntax is weird. It also clutters up our functions. So as you can see, things get really long. For a single line function that just returns A plus B, you probably wouldn't need to write tests for that anyways, but in our case, it's like 10 times as long. And on top of all of that, doc tests actually lack a lot of the important features, capabilities of things like unit tests, which we'll see in the next video. For example, if we're working with, we're testing, 10 functions and they all use the same data, and we want to test them with one object, or we want to run code before every test or after every test, we would have to duplicate that in every doc string. Using something like unit test, we are able to say, run this code before every test, or run this code after every test, and it reduces duplication. And lastly, the tests are just kind of brittle, finicky, grouchy, whatever you want to call them. They are not my first choice for writing tests, unless if I am writing documentation for something and want it to be thorough, then I will write doc tests, but I still don't really enjoy it. In the next video, however, I'm going to show you how to write unit tests.